going to start, and I'm going to start by reading an introduction to diversity, because this meeting today is being hosted by Diversity Leap International, and I'm going to short introduction on what Diversity Leap International is, and then also I'm going to read an introduction as to why we are here and why we are discussing this topic of the day. So to start off, the topic of the day is toxic workplaces, women and mental health. So, which is, as I said, is being hosted by DLI, which is Diversity Leap International. So DLI is a consultancy firm that offers a range of services aiming at achieving gender equality in the workplace, as well as to support strategic communication and advocacy for startups. We are passionate about the elimination of discrimination against men, women, boys, and girls, and we thrive in the empowerment of women and the achievement of equality between women and men as equal partners and beneficiaries of development, human rights, humanitarian action, peace, and security. Sorry. At Diversity Leap International, we see gender mainstreaming in the workplace as a path to sustainable growth. Companies and organizations that have prioritized gender have decreased staff turnover and increased productivity. They make better leadership decisions and have a better work-life balance, which is a crucial component for mental health. So going to the discussion of the day, an introduction to toxic workplaces. A year Australian population study has found that full-time workers employed by organizations that fail to prioritize their employees' mental health have a threefold increased risk of being diagnosed with depression. And while working long hours is a risk factor for cardiovascular disease or stroke, poor management practices pose a greater risk for depression, according to the research. So the research is by the University of South Australia, published in the British Medical Journal, and is led by UNISA, Psychosocial Safety Climate Observation, which is the world's first research platform exploring workplace psychological health and safety. So psychosocial safety climate, which is PSC, is a term used to describe management practices and communication and participation systems that protect workers' mental health and safety. So the research says that poor workplace mental health can be traced back to poor management practices, priorities, and values, which then flows through to high job demands and low resources. Evidence shows that companies that fail to reward or acknowledge the employees for hard work, impose unreasonable demands on workers, and do not give them autonomy are placing their staff at a much higher risk of toxic environments. And it also shows that men are also more likely to become depressed if their workplace pays low attention to their psychological health. Due to the global burden of depression, which affects an estimated 300 million people worldwide and shows no signs of decreasing despite available treatments, more attention is now being paid to poorly functioning toxic work environments, which could contribute to the problem, especially during this pandemic period. So coming to our country here in Kenya, in June of this year, a local organization called Fatuma's Voice launched a toxic workplace survey. The survey is still ongoing. The purpose of this survey is to uncover the root causes and effects of toxic work environments for staff, management, and organizations as a whole. The final report will be freely available for download and shared on social media. And you can find this, for more information, you can find them on Fatuma's Voice, as one word, .co.ke. However, more discussions and research need to continue in order for us to see clearly the impact of toxic workplaces the impact of toxic workplaces in our country. So thank you so much for joining. Asanteni sana for joining us. And today we are honored to be joined by two professionals who are experts in their fields. We have Carol Njangiru, who is a HR generalist, who is also very interested in speaking out against toxic workplaces and workplace bullying. And we have Marianne Warogoro, who is a counseling psychologist who offers psychosocial support to survivors of toxic workplaces, among other mental health illnesses. Karibuni sana. At
Asante.
this point, welcome. At this point, we would also like to point out that we had a panelist who had a lived experience of workplace bullying, and she was working in a very toxic environment, and she had to decline to join because of the trauma that she has undergone. So the issues that we are going to discuss today, they are very serious and they have a really negative impact even in our private lives. So it's a great honor that all of you have managed to join this meeting today. And we really hope that the discussions we start today, this is just an introductory discussion, and that you'll be able to forward to continue with this discussion in your other areas of work and everywhere. So we are ambassadors. This is a platform for future ambassadors. So to kick us off, we are going to start with Carol. So Carol, you are a HR generalist and you have worked in the field of HR for a long time. You have great experience in this. So please tell us, what is a toxic workplace culture and how does this impact the workforce?
Thank you, Dorcas. First, I'll start by just briefly explaining what is toxic. Toxic is anything or anyone that harms the well-being of someone else. And explaining what culture is. Culture is a way of life and norms shared by a group of people or a system where people share the same beliefs, values, and attitudes. Therefore, in an organization, which is basically the people, because organization is not the building, it's actually the people in it. Work culture is the mix of leadership, values, traditions, beliefs, interactions, behaviors, and attitude that actually affect the emotional and relational environment of the workplace. Having said that, then, a toxic workplace, therefore, is an organization that is plagued with negativity, unhappiness, and not only does it affect the productivity of the organization, but also one's well-being. And a toxic workplace actually involves things like bullying, mobbing, gaslighting. And just to briefly explain what this is, gaslighting is whereby one is actually promoted on the basis of, of knowing somebody or constantly being promised something, but then at the end of it all, you're told, I did not say that. Like if you work this hard or if you bring in revenue of this much, you're going to be promoted. But then when you go to ask, you're told, I did not say that. And so you end up appearing like you're crazy. So that is gaslighting. On the bullying can be verbal, whereby maybe you're told things that are harmful, and or people form like a clique, and when you find them talking, they keep quiet, or you are in a group of people, they share a joke which you are not part of, basically stonewalling you, like you are not part of us. And so those are some of the toxicity in the workplace.
Yeah, and I'm going to come back to you, Carol, because you've made some interesting points. And please, as we continue, I'd like to encourage us, if you have a comment, if you've ever gone through some of these things, please write down in the chat You can share your comments, you can share your issues in the chat below. Any questions to the panelists, please share as we continue. So, Kara, I'm going to come back to you, but I just want to jump to you, Marianne, from a psychological point of view. How do you know you're in a toxic work environment? Because as Kara has mentioned some of the terminologies for toxic work environments, you might not know that you're going through that. So, Marianne, how do you know that you're in a toxic work environment?
All right, thank you so much, Dorcas, for inviting me, and for everyone who has joined us, welcome. So, of course, as Carol has mentioned what a toxic workplace means, and now you're asking about the signs because, of course, sometimes we may not know. And also being aware of this can help you do something about it. So most of the time you find that she has mentioned about bullying. So you find that there is constant bullying whereby there are different types of bullying. There are those types whereby you find people are gossiping, or maybe you are excluded in terms of communication. So you find that there are actually things that are done on purpose to make your life, let's say, miserable in general. When you're at work and you become dysfunctional in that you're not able to work well, you're not able to function well. You find that maybe people are talking behind your back. You find that things like communication, communication is very important in a workplace. So you can imagine when communication is not done well, let's say in terms of deadlines, they are not clear, or they are even unrealistic, and you're expected to meet them by that time, which is actually something that another person, or even the person that is telling you to do this, cannot even do it in the first place. You find things like cliques, whereby you find there are groups that people are mejingiza and you're not allowed to be part of them. You find things like whereby you maybe you have a certain job description, but then you are expected to do something that is way out of it, and you're supposed to actually just do it without complaining. You're supposed to be happy and do it. And there can be things like you're asked to actually work maybe after work hours without complaining. And of course, this happens sometimes when there is too much pressure, but then when it's a constant thing and maybe you're the only person who is expected to do this, then you know that you're in a toxic workplace. So those are some of the signs to look out for you to be able to know that you're in a toxic workplace, and you need to do something about it.
So, as you were saying, the COVID pandemic has forced many of us to start working remotely. We are working from home for those who can. And so if we are in toxic workplaces physically, in the offices, has the COVID pandemic and working from home helped improve the situation, or has it increased the toxic work culture? So, and if it has, please share with us so that we can know, because some of us might be going through it and we don't know that this is toxic. So please, Carol, share with us. Do you think, in your view, the toxic work culture has followed us home, or have we been saved from it by working from home? And some of the examples that you think that it has either aggravated the situation or made it better for us. Yeah.
Okay, just before I answer that question, Dorcas, just to mention that how does toxicity actually impact the workforce? It actually breeds unrest. It brings in competition. Competition we know is good, but when it's a cutthroat competition whereby you will actually step on your colleagues' feet. You will actually do or say things that are not true just to get to the top. Then that is not a good competition. It brings about constant stresses. You are always stressed and negativity. And this is why we find some employees actually calling in sick day after day, because basically the thought of going to the office makes them sick, literally. There's also the high turnover, and and as Marianne mentioned, bullying. And this does not only affect the employee, but also the employer, in the sense that a company or another organization that has a high turnover, it actually does not speak well to outsiders. We have sources where people recruit for other organizations. So if recruiters see that there is a very high turnover, it's questionable. Why does this happen? You know, even in terms of productivity, it lowers the productivity. And then what does this mean? It means low revenue. And of course, as organization, it's going to suffer. So about just to mention the different toxic work environments that we have a dictatorial culture. This is whereby the power workplace actually relies on power and control. And you find the leaders are actually leading with by bullying and this kind of thing. And it's always like, this is the way to go about it for everyone. And so I was reading an article, and it was showing that a lot of multinational companies actually have this kind of a culture whereby it's bullying and it's power and control just to get to the top. The other kind of culture we have, it's a disjointed culture. And this means although it might appear as hierarchical and bureaucratic, basically it's a comradeship kind of environment, whereby Dorcas is my buddy, then I'm going to be promoted because Dorcas being the CEO and I'm a friend, I'm going to get that position. So no matter how hard Marianne works, but she's not a friend to Dorcas, then she's not gonna get to that position. And finally, the last one, which is the ideal culture, is whereby values and beliefs and goals are clearly shared amongst the employees, and conflicts are actually dealt with effectively. And there is also a clear communication lines, and actually issues are tackled as when they appear. So to answer your question, has COVID pandemic forced many workers to start working remotely? As this actually increased the toxic work culture. So going back to the different culture that we have seen, if, for example, your organization is dictatorial, you've only moved physically from your location and taken your office to your home. So nothing really changes there. Actually, if anything, it makes it worse. Why? Because at least while you are physically going to the office, you would say, I leave all my struggles, I leave all my, excuse my French, my shit at the door of the office, and I go home where I can relax, where I can be with my family, and it's a different environment. But here is a case where there is no separation between your office and your house, or rather your home. And if you are unlucky to have a small space, you find that you are actually carrying that heavy burden because you are not able to separate the two. A certain company actually, when the employees started working from home, they had a micromanager leader. And this guy was so, I mean, he's one of those people who did not like people working from home, but of course circumstances forced them to do so. And so what he did, he installed a device in each and every employee's computer, like a watch clock. So it would time in it show if you're absent from your laptop for 10 minutes, he would call and ask, where are you? Why aren't you not on your workstation? You know, and calling you at odd hours just for you to respond to a question that could have actually waited until the next day, or sending you emails in the middle of the night and expecting response. I mean, this is a toxic manager, this is a toxic leader. And when you're working from home with this kind of a manager, definitely your well-being is being affected. So I think to some extent the pandemic has also brought about has not really improved the toxicity at workplace, especially depending on the culture of your workplace.
Carol, yeah, I hear you, Carol, and I've heard that story. But I also heard of a company that has TeamViewer on the laptops of the employees, and the manager would ask you to keep the TeamViewer on. TeamViewer is like, I don't know if there's an IT person here, he can help us or she can help us to simplify what TeamViewer is. But it's able to see into your screen, to see your screen and to see what you're doing. So one of the companies did this. They put TeamViewer on the laptops of all the employees who are working from home, and then every few minutes the manager would say, can you share your screen? I want to see what you're working on. So this level of being micromanaged, especially when you're in a home, I think it makes you feel trapped, like you cannot run, you cannot run away. Yeah, so
Absolutely.
this law has written to say TeamViewer is an app or device that helps you, allows one to access your computer remotely. Yeah, desktop access. So if your manager is constantly checking, hey, what are you working on? So you feel followed, and Nancy is saying that is abuse of TeamViewer because it should only be used if someone is having an issue with their laptop. But as you're saying, if you were in the office, we would leave these laptops and all those things in our drawers and go home. You can switch off your phone because your phone is private, and feel free, be freed from the toxic workplace. But as you're saying, the toxicity has followed us home.
Yep.
And especially during the pandemic when we are also closed in the houses, then we start to get this feeling of you cannot run, you are jailed, you're in a cell.
Yeah.
And maybe for Marianne, I don't know if you have a few points to add on these. If not, don't worry. Carol has given quite a number of examples. But would you have something to add on this? I know I'm ambushing you, but let's hear from a psychologist.
Not really, but I just wanted maybe to chip in on the issue of control. And of course, that is something that usually happens that shows you a workplace is toxic, whereby someone wants to constantly see what you're doing. And this comes back to the psychology of like bullying and all of that, whereby most of the time when someone wants to control you, of course, they may instill fear. They want to see what you're constantly doing. They want you to be on your toes so that they can feel in charge. And most of the time, what I can say for the leaders, you don't really need to do this to be able to be a good leader. You can be seen as a good leader by your actions, your performance. It does not need to come from other people, so being maybe controlling them so as to be seen your superior. This can be done in another way.
Dorcas, just to add on this point again, pre-pandemic, working from the office had its own advantages. For instance, you're working under pressure and you feel like you need to vent out. You would actually maybe walk to your colleague's desk and you could physically vent it out, talk about it, and by the time you're going back to your desk, your mind is free. And if you had a clouded mind, then you're able to think through clearly. And like now, maybe you are at home, you're a family person, and probably with your spouse there, you had a fight in the morning, and then pressure again from work, and you have kids who are calling you out from all direction. Mommy, I want this. I mean, this is basically too much. So yeah, I think working from the office has had its own advantages. You could actually leave and talk to your colleague and actually feel better. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you, Caro and Marianne. And speaking of that, part of the reason for this webinar was also to examine and discuss the myths around women in power. Because we've had so many stories, and we want to move on to this part of the women and toxic workplaces and mental health and all that. So we hear all these phrases that women are worse bullies than men, or women in power always play it rough with other women. So we are going to tackle some of the questions that were sent to us on social media when immediately we announced that we are going to do this webinar. So please also, for you who are here, please also write down your comments or experiences in the chat, and we'll read them in general about this topic. But then we want to look at this issue of toxic workplaces and women, and just to see, to examine what we believe to be true and what the reality is. So coming to you, Marianne, as a psychologist, please tell us what kinds of women, because we hear that women, once women get to power, they change, and then they turn into something else. We don't know if that's true or that's some of the myths that we believe. So tell us, what kinds, and before you tell us, one of the questions that came to us on social media was, are women more likely to bully, to be bullies, more likely to bully than men? Is there like a thing that women are more bullies than men are? And from a gender perspective, we know that the workplace is actually a very until juicy. The workplace has been a very masculine place, and looking at research that is out there, the simple answer to this is that no, women are not more likely to bully than men, because the reality is that people holding positions of power and control over others in the workplace, even when you look at your own office, people in power are more likely to be men than women. We have more male bosses than women. So 60 to 75 of those who bully others in the workplace are men. It's not uh, um, it's not a DNA thing, it's the culture. If a workplace has more men than women in power, so, and they want to exercise domination or onto people from a lesser level, it's going to be more likely that those will be men. Well, 60 to 75% of the women, of the targets are women. Yet, we see also from research that women in power can also be aggressive and harass other women that depend on them. So basically, it's a culturally accepted behavior in many organizations, unless we do something to arrest it. So coming to you, Marianne, from a psychological point of view, what have you seen in your years of practice? What kinds of women are more likely to bully others? And also, if you can help us understand, do women experience bullying differently from men? Is there a difference between the way women are exposed to bullying, and also what kinds of women are likely to bully others? Yeah, I don't know if you got my question.
Yes, I did. I'll go back to what I was talking about earlier, about the psychology of bullying. Most of the time you find that whenever someone, not even just a woman, like in general, whenever someone needs to, excuse me, whenever someone needs to put another person down so that they feel better, it definitely tells you that they have an issue within themselves. So when it comes to the workplace, you can imagine like someone who is, let's say, taking credit of someone else's work. Of course, they want to be seen as working more. Why? Because most likely they are not. So when we come to women, of course, the way you've mentioned, women are not more likely to bully in general, and we find that we have more male bullies. However, the thing is, when it comes to the men, they tend to bully both men and women. And most of the time you find when it comes to women, they tend to bully women more. And research shows that this happens to like 70%. You find that women bully women 70% more. So most of the time when someone is bullying another person, there are things that they look at, whether this person seems weak and they cannot really defend themselves. So you find that women now bully other women because they feel like they wouldn't really stand up for themselves. Another thing is you find that most of the time, this is the workplace still is a male dominated place. You find that we have maybe more male bosses compared to women. And then when you find that you actually have a woman boss, sometimes it's not even the reality. You just find that people assume that this woman is bossy or anajisikia. So you find that there is even that people assume already, even without seeing what they do. And you find that most of the time when one is a leader, they're ambitious, they're go-getters. And for women, the way we have been culturalized to be, we are more of naturals, we have to be soft. So you find that these qualities of a leader are not really considered female per se. So you find that most of the time you'll be considered a bully. But the other point I can say is you find that the fact that we have more male bosses than women, then also some of the women that get into these positions may feel like they are not adequate enough. So of course they will try and use that control to show that, yes, I am the boss here and whatever I say goes. So you find that they will tend to bully more so that they maintain that status quo. The other thing, of course, the way you're saying, and I remember we were discussing about this, people say that women are their own enemies. So you find that if I'm at the top, I do not want another woman to be on top like me. And I can say it can happen, but most of the time it's because that is the way things have been. So it's like it's expected. So I don't want to nurture the other women. I want to kuwakalia ndio they don't come up and be my competitors. So that is what I can say about the fact that the psychology behind women who bully each other. And now to come to the point where how women receive bullying differently from men, it's because you find that most men are usually masculine, they're usually like defensive, they can stand up for themselves. But most of the time women were like, yes, when you're told to do this, you're like, yes. When you feel like you can actually feel like this person is oppressing you and you don't have that courage to stand up for yourself. So that's what I can say. Women receive more bullying and they take it more because they cannot be able to stand up for themselves. And of course, we are more sensitive when it comes to things like people talking about you, people gossiping about you. We are more sensitive. And of course, you find that maybe we will not even talk to each other. Let's say today you tell me, hey, Marianne, your shirt today, I don't know, inakaa aje, si ufunge hiyo button ama ufungue ama unafungua hivyo kwa nini? I will take it more personal compared to a man. Most men don't even care about how they dress, they just dress. So you find that we are more sensitive, and that is why we receive bullying like differently from men. You may find that something that has been done to you and it's been done to a man, they wouldn't take it in as much as I would. So yeah.
Yeah, Marianne, you raised an interesting point. And I remember discussing this, the notion that women are their worst enemies. And I'm going to throw this to you, to Caro and Marianne. We know that in a very competitive environment like the workplace, especially our offices, we know that it is a very patriarchal culture system that we had to penetrate in, because women were not even allowed to work. We didn't even have ID cards a few years ago. So do you think, and it's just in your opinion, do you think that the notion of women being their own worst enemies, do you think it is a gameplay that people are led to believe, so that when women get to these places where they were not allowed to be in the first place, which is the leaderships of these workplaces, do you think that there is a preset game plan that when women get there, that they are preset and expected to fight, to cat fight and to be their worst enemies, so that we maintain the status quo, which is women are not getting to the leadership positions? It's just an opinion I want to hear. Do you really believe is this to be true, or do you believe that this is a game plan, preset game plan to make sure that women behave according to that phrase? Yeah. It's a surprise question. You can just to hear your opinion.
I would say, oh, sorry, Carol.
Go on, Marianne.
Okay, for me, I would say, yes, it's something that I would say it happens, but thinking about it like how you have explained it, it could be true, because like the way I was reasoning it out is you find that we have limited let's say positions, or you find that we hardly get those positions. So if there are few positions, so there is constantly that competition, and therefore I feel like I'm constantly threatened, and for me to be able to remain in that position, then I have to bring the other ones down so that they don't come and take my position, which is, like you're saying, it could be something that is not even in existence. It could be just some play just to make it remain that way, but it's something that definitely happens, according to me.
And Caro?
What I wanted to say is, I think there's what we call toxic masculinity, which is basically a woman who rises up the ladder, and it's actually among men. This woman has had to work extremely hard, because basically it's what the society has put in place, that men should be the leaders and not women. if we go by the days that women should be actually, they belong in the kitchen and they should be seen and not heard. Something that thank God is actually changing now. And we are seeing a lot of women coming into leadership and actually making a difference. So what happens, and from my observation, is that these women, they've had to prove themselves, you know, more than the men. And because they don't want to be seen as weaklings, so what happens, they become less sensitive, and they become less empathetic, because if they show their femininity side, their counterparts, the men, are going to deem them as weak. And just to give an example, I have a close friend, and she's actually risen up the ladder, working in one of the prestigious organization, and she's worked abroad as well. But it was really difficult for her working among different races. First, she's a Black woman. Secondly, she was pretty young. And so she had to work extremely hard. She had to prove herself because of her, you know, because of her race, because of her status. So she's that became her mode, actually. And so she's always like in a fighting mode. And you would say that her femininity side has died, but it's actually what has the society has made her to be, you know. So I think the societal expectation is what has made the woman in power be seen as, you know, to be said that women are at their own worst enemies, because they have to prove themselves much more than the men.
Yeah, so, and I don't want to add anything to what you two have said. I just want to ask you, Carol, as someone who has studied HR to an advanced level, and someone who has been in HR and you have experience in HR, I don't know if you have observed, so that you can answer our next question, of which groups of women are more susceptible to being bullied in the workplace, and what can the employer do to arrest this? Because Mary Ann has told us what kinds of women are more likely to bully others. So for you, please tell us what types and what kinds of women are more likely to be bullied, and what can you as a manager in HR, other managers and employers do to stop this? Yeah.
I think, and this I can actually give from my own experience. I think the level of education. I remember when I joined an organization, one of the lady kept on like showing me off her papers and kept on saying, you know, I have my degree, I can leave this organization and get a job. What do you have? By that time, of course, I didn't have my degree. And she kept on, you know, drumming this in, and she would always say, you know, if people are to be laid off on merit or on their level of education, you'll be the first one to go, because you don't have a degree. And so for me, this was actually a sort of bullying, yeah, because I thought, I mean, what gives you the right to tell me this? And to some extent, it would actually made me cower in and feel inferior. And so, so this is one thing I can say. And then the other thing I can say as well, and I stand to be corrected on this. I think also the status, you know, the marital status, because somebody will come and say, I'm a working mother, I don't have time, so that at least I've got an excuse why I can come in late, because I took my child to hospital, my child was not feeling well, and you know, it's a genuine reason. But then this same person would ask you, but you don't have a family, you don't have kids, why didn't you do this, why can't you do this? So I think the social aspect of it can actually make some of these women susceptible to this kind of toxicity.
And And Marianne, do you have any thoughts on any additions? And please, for those of us who've joined us, please, if you have an opinion on this, on what kinds of women are bullied in the workplace, let us know. Marianne, any additions on that?
No, not really. I've said enough.
So at this point, I'm going to read some of the comments that have come in. From Alfred, is toxicity often denounced in workplaces? And do institutions have ethical codes of conduct to protect its employees? Maybe, Carol, that's directly for you.
Actually, I would say to answer that question, it will go back again to the culture of the organization, to the leadership in the organization. If you have a leadership that is actually sensitive to the employees, and if we have an ideal workplace that we talked about, whereby it's a stable, where we have a stable culture, and this is actually something that can be addressed to. But one thing I can say is, even when we have leaders who are negative, I'm sure there'll be maybe one person or two who this leader can listen to. And so what one can do is actually take your grievances or your issues to this person, then for the person to talk to this leader. Unfortunately, there are no laws actually against toxicity at workplace. However, for instance, in the Employment Act of Kenya, Cap 226, Section 5 and Section 6, which actually talks about discrimination and sexual harassment at workplace, then this law can actually come into play, but when it's actually based on the toxicity is actually based on discrimination and sexual harassment. However, and I think as a person, what you need to do is to have a self-awareness. Know what are your, how do you work under pressure? How much can you take in terms of negativity? And if you feel you can keep up with it by defending yourself, which is basically speaking up when it happens. And you can also have it documented down so that it's not a he says, she says, or I did not say this kind of thing, but clearly have it documented and actually deal with the issue. I think this is one way that you can tackle this this issue. The other thing is, if it's too much for you and you feel your well-being, your health is more important, despite the fact that you need the money, especially in these hard economic times, walk away. It might not be the easiest thing, but at the end of the day, your well-being is more important than anything else. If you cannot change the culture, not even one person you can change, then the thing is, it's not a question of joining them, it's a question of leaving them. That's just my opinion.
Yeah, and you raise a very good and important point, the point on reporting, which is something that we don't do. I think we are so used, especially, I don't know if it's a Kenyan thing or what, we are so used to suffering in silence and hoping for things getting better. Well, those things, those toxicities that we keep facing, they start killing us from inside. Yeah, we're taking medications for things that we really can report, and probably we are the people that can actually be the agents of change. Moving to the next point, Nancy says, thank you for a great presentation. Are there tools organizations or employees can utilize to measure toxicity in the workplace? Marianne, do you want to tackle that? Or Carol? How can you measure?
Sorry, I haven't heard of that, but the signs that we have given, people can look out for them. And then also the effects that Carol mentioned, like issues like low turnover, people calling in sick for work. Such things can be able to be used to indicate that the environment is toxic. So it can be on your side as the employee, whereby you find that all these signs that we have mentioned are happening. And also for the employers, now you can look at how is the performance of the employees so that you can be able to do something about it and now go deeper and find out why is this happening.
Yeah. And Esther here says, I would say that I am a survivor of this, and I would say that I knew I was in a toxic workplace, but mostly people fear to lose their jobs and worry that they might not get another job, which is what, Carol, you mentioned. At the end of the day, it's up to you to see how much you can handle. But the decision finally is yours. Sometimes you cannot keep up, and sometimes you're forced to leave. Yeah, but it's true that many. Yeah, Marianne.
Maybe I can add on that point. Of course, leaving your work when you don't have an exit plan is not always the best thing. But then, like in my experience, what I did is you can look for something to do as you continue looking for work. So you could be in a certain career, like let's say for me, I'm in psychology. So I can find something, even if it's a menial job, just something to sustain my needs until I find it. Because I promise you, I tried staying in that place, and you find that your mind actually kind of gets blocked. You can't even think or even have the energy to apply for jobs or that confidence, even your self-esteem goes down. So you don't even have the confidence that I can actually get another job because you've been constantly reminded how useless you are. So I would advise maybe getting an in-between job. It could be not in your line of work, but at least it's going to sustain you as you heal and let go of that and actually get to rebuild your mental health.
Yeah, very true. And I think for the next comment, Carol, you had tackled, what are the legal implications in a country like Kenya in view of toxicity in the workplace? I think you had tackled that, right?
Yeah, yeah.
The others are about team viewer. I disagree with you, Dorcas. You do not have to be empowered to be toxic. Toxicity can come from any level. Yeah, Emma, I was reading a report that was talking about a top-down bullying. So it's very true that toxicity can come from any direction. Kaltuma has said, could it be possible that women also bully men since men cannot talk about it? I don't know who wants to answer that, but Carol, do you want to tackle that?
I'm just trying to think of how to answer this question.
Can women bully men?
Yes, I think
That's
I
the
can.
question.
I think yes. I would say yes. And again, this. I mean, we have people who are manipulative in nature, and you find that this probably is the kind of boss that you have, and your personality is the quiet one, the non-confrontational one. And yeah, because you want to be in the good books of your boss, so what happens? You succumb to the kind of leadership that your boss is, and so you find that even as a man, you don't have a voice because you are basically under this woman. And yeah, I think I really don't want to say much about this, but yes, I think it's possible that women can actually bully men as well.
Yeah. I see some of the comments coming in, but I want to go because of the comments that are coming in, and one is connected to my next point. I think it's a good time for me to read. So one of the questions that came to us on the social media, it was a question on why would women not support each other. I'm seeing some people here agreeing that women are their worst enemies, and I think we have already discussed that that previously. So I'm going to read another comment that came in. Why would women not support each other? So the thing is, some of the things we have discussed today are if there are very few women in positions of power, why would they not support other women and help them succeed? Are women particularly keen to discourage and undermine female competitors? Because here I'm seeing someone agreeing that women are the worst enemies, and we are trying to um, dis, dis, disregard this myth. Workplace experiences, first of all, not gender, can bring out aggressive behavior among women. So it's not that women are born to hate other women or to not hold each other's hands. But indeed, some of the female bullies indicate that they simply modeled their aggressive leadership style after the behavior they were subjected to by their own mentors. And this is what Carol was trying to say. And maybe the terminology is the one that did not go down well with Charles or Law's comments. But what we are saying is we found a workplace that we had to fight to join. Remember, women were not allowed to work until recently. I think in Kenya, maybe in the 70s, that's when women started having their ID cards. And therefore, from then, that is when maybe they could get into these positions. So what Carol is trying to say is that a highly masculine and aggressive work climate constitutes an important risk factor in this respect. So the workplace is highly masculine, and when women get to these workplaces, they are trying to balance between being respected by their male counterparts that they found there, who are the majority in the boardrooms, and also trying to show that they can be leaders. And our skewed idea of being a leader is to be more male, to be more aggressive, to be more masculine. And the combination of a workplace that has low expectations of female leadership anyway, because we are all expecting this woman she's not a true leader. So a workplace that has low expectations of female leadership and the presence of very few female leaders who are an exception to this rule creates an environment that is particularly toxic. Actually, studies reveal that women and men do not really differ in the behavior they display. So we cannot really say that women are their worst enemies. So because the bullying is not different, and the behavior that they display when they have achieved positions of leadership. Look at our MPs and look at our MPs in the Kenyan context. We say that, oh, mama ni whatever, she's caring and she's going to help us. But when you look at the list of corrupt leaders, you see the women are still there. It's a culture that they go and find, and they have to play, they feel that they have to play to the tune. However, competitive and aggressive behavior stand out more when displayed by women. When you hear about corrupt cases, you think that the women are like the double corrupt, but actually they are more, the lens is more on them, because in the first place, we were not expecting them to get there anyway. And then secondly, we are not expecting them to fall. So we are constantly watching them to see when they will fall. So even though this kind of lens seems particularly inappropriate and discriminatory in view of the stereotype that women should show empathy. So we expect that women, when they get to power, they should show empathy, they should not bully like the men, they should be like this, they should show care and help others also at work. But remember that we are keeping a lens on the women and forgetting that the majority of the bullies are the men, because the majority of the people in those positions are the men. I'd like to hear, guys, please comment and give feedback on this on this topic and on whatever I've just read. But just to remind us that competitive and aggressive workplace behavior is more easily accepted when it's coming from the men. The aggression is easily accepted when it's coming from the men than when it's coming from the women. That's why we keep hearing all these phrases. So please note down your comment, react to what I've just said, and let's see, let's hear your comments. So Carol, you have mentioned this, and this is what you're trying to explain. So Charles Olo, I hope I have answered your question, but if we don't have to agree, please write a response on that, and anyone else can write a response on that. So going to you, do you have any response to that, Carol? Marianne, any response to what I've just read?
I think you've explained it, what I actually meant.
Yeah, okay. And Marianne Waruguru?
For me, I wanted I wanted to agree with you on that part 4. Most of the time, the bullying is usually the same. So in all genders, but the way we have been culturalized to do is we see men as more aggressive, and that's okay. But when a woman is aggressive, then she's a bully, she's bossy. So I just wanted to second you on that. And I also wanted to bring up another point of token leadership.
Yeah.
That is something that we have been seeing. Maybe you're just put in a position just because you're female and because the law requires gender equality. So for me, what that brings out is the psychological aspect of not feeling adequate. You're just there because you're a woman, not because you've worked hard or you can perform equally as best. So of course that feeling of inadequacy can also be projected to other people as bullying, whereby you want to feel actually that you belong there, and you have to constantly keep fighting to be seen as that leader.
Yeah. I mean, tokenism, as you said, Marianne, is one of the, it's supposed to be, okay, tokenism is when in Kenya we call flower girls. You're given a position not because you have the qualification, it's because someone is needed, a female is needed for that position. That's what MPs call each other, flower girls. And I know being a flower girl, it also, accepting to be that flower girl also exposes you to bullying from other people, because they see they work really hard, they reached the bottom lines, but you were plucked from somewhere, and you're supposed to fill in the shoes, and they don't believe that you have the qualification. So, and moving from that, and back to you, Marianne, what do you believe, and what have you seen are the long-term or short-term effects of a toxic workplace on women? In the last webinar, I'm sure maybe some people are wondering, okay, today we are talking about women, but in our last webinar last month, we were talking about the mental health coming from the side of the men. So today we want to know about the women. What are the long-term and short-term effects of a toxic workplace on women, even at home, anywhere? Tell us about the women.
Of course, we are talking about women, so maybe I can start with general. Of course, when one is going through a toxic environment, you become dysfunctional. We are saying this is a dysfunctional work environment. So you're not even able to work or give your all. So let's say it's an issue of control, then you're constantly in fear. And of course, fear is what now transpires to anxiety, whereby you're constantly in fear. Maybe when your boss shows up, you feel like you're not doing the right thing. You need to pretend that you're just so busy there working. And it can be also when you're constantly threatened about losing your job. You're kwanza those bosses that remind you, there are so many people out there looking for work. So of course you are afraid of losing your work at any time. There's things like depression, whereby this now comes as a result of constantly being in that toxic work environment. But I want us to think about when we talk about the short-term effects, it could be things like you don't have that motivation to work. You can imagine, like, people always say that we should not look forward to the weekends because you should have a life that you don't want to run away from. But you find that most of us on Friday, we always like, thank God it's Friday, you're not even working. And then when it comes to Sunday, you're dreading to go back to work. And that could be a sign that your workplace is toxic. There can be things like you actually not motivated, and of course this means that your productivity goes down. When we come to the long term, and you've talked about the issue of women, you can imagine this woman is supposed to work in the workplace and also go and take care of the family. So you can imagine that exhaustion and burnout, and spending the whole day maybe being called names, being confused, being constantly in fear. Then of course this is going to translate back at home, whereby you will also not be productive. You will not give your all to your children, to your family. I can relate to the issues of whereby you just get home and you just want to sleep, because you cannot be able to do anything. Even doing a house chore becomes a big issue. You find that the depression, then you find that you're just crying because maybe something happened to you and you couldn't speak to anyone. So you're constantly crying. And there's issues to do with conflict with other people in the work environment. So you find that watu waongeleshani, ama maybe if I do something small, then you just flip and we just start a war. And of course, a toxic work environment has a lot of consequences, both socially, emotionally, and physically as well. You find that you get sick whenever you're really stressed and burnt out. Then even your immune system goes down, and that's why people call in sick work. There's issues of turnover, whereby everyone is just leaving, and you can imagine that struggle to keep orienting different people every now and then to the same work. Then it also leads to lack of productivity in the workplace. So those are some of the effects that we have of toxic workplaces, and that is why we are saying we need to be careful and take care of ourselves. And employers need to make sure that this is not happening if you want your place to run well and for people to work for you well.
And yeah, and I think each one of us, Marianne, as we were talking, they were going like, and because it's almost all of us who've been through this. Maybe we'd like to know anyone who has not been in our toxic workplace, then that would be the exception. Because it seems like it's a culture that we've accepted. For you to be a manager, you have to make sure everyone shakes in fear when you're around. But Carol, tell us, how can the management change the workplace culture? to mitigate issues of toxicity, or and how can employees protect themselves in such an environment? What can the managers do, and what can the employees do? Yeah.
I think one of the things I would say would be in terms of communication, having transparent lines of communication, and a genuine open policy, whereby, I mean, you say you have an open policy, you can come to me and talk to me anytime, but in real sense, it's not. So how about just being real about it? Like when you say it's an open policy, you really mean that. Like when I walk into your office, because you will stop all that you're doing just to listen to me. And also listening does not just mean like verbally listening, but listening, seeing that, okay, Caro has been very productive, but the last few weeks she's been rather, I mean, she's not meeting her deadlines. She's not performing according to how she was doing it before. And just talking to Caro, find out what is wrong. Are you okay? It could be an issue at home. Maybe she's got a family that is suffering from a terminal illness, so thereby affecting her and, of course, affecting her work. And being observant as well. You know, you have this colleague who is always very bubbly, and in meetings, she's always being proactive, giving fresh ideas and this kind of thing, and suddenly they go quiet. Approach the person, find out, are you okay? What is wrong? You know, so building that friendship, that rapport with your fellow colleagues, and really being genuine about their concern. Then the other thing I would say is creating an environment, like we have some organization where they have psychosocial support, and actually having somebody in case you cannot talk to your supervisor because he or she is the one causing you grief. Talk to somebody, talk to the psychosocial person, you know, and just vent out. And then the other thing, actually, as an HR practitioner, which sometimes we fail in, is keeping confidentiality. You know, if I come to you with my issues, maybe I'm going through a divorce, and this is affecting my performance, I don't want to hear it in the corridors of the office, like everybody is saying, oh, you know, she's being left by the husband and these kind of things. So maintaining that confidentiality is one thing. And also, like really, as employees staying positive at work and separating, you know, there's gossip and then there's just like a negative vibe. Being able to separate all this and knowing when to talk and when not to talk. Somebody comes to you with gossip, just tell them, I don't want to hear. Because you're telling me about Dorcas or about Marianne. I don't know what you go to Marianne. When you go to Marianne, what you're telling her about me. So don't entertain such. As somebody was telling me, just tell them I have an allergy to nonsense, you know, that kind of thing. And also trying, I mean, you cannot change, because culture is not something that you can change overnight. But I believe if you keep on talking positivity, you know, like in a department, if you're in your department, you can be able to change the three of you and you work well in a synergy, then the other departments will see what you're doing and they will want that as well. So slowly or eventually you'll be able to probably change the entire organization. Yeah.
Sorry, I was on mute. Good points, Carol. And before I give you, Marianne, the chance to respond to the same question, I want to read something again that was part of the comments that came in to us. That time research reveals that highly aggressive work climates. So there's competition and there's aggression. highly aggressive work climates in which workers are expected to compete with each other and only one type of contribution is valued and rewarded, can invite a range of problematic work behaviors, including bullying, sabotage, cheating, and fraud. This damages the psychological well-being, physical health, work motivation, and task performance of male and female employees. Securing a more cooperative and supportive work climate, which is what Carol was talking about, helps to deflect such problems, preventing exposure of women to gender discrimination in the workplace is the most effective way to prevent the emergence of female bullying. Making the workplace a fair playing ground, free from all forms of discrimination, will help change the culture from that of a toxic to a healthy working environment. So it is up to us managers and employees to push for an environment that is free from discrimination, all forms of discrimination, for this to be cultivated as a priority, because we've said all of us here, we are ambassadors. We are going with this message today. So back to you, Marianne. What can employers and managers do to prevent and intervene where there is a toxic workplace? What measures can an employee take to survive or cope with such a workplace?
So I mentioned on the part of and employees. All right, so I'm going to start with I'm going to start with the employers, and most of it Carol has mentioned. And maybe something that I can add is on the issue of trainings. So of course, like I was saying, we have different types of leadership, and we have that myth that a leader should be bossy, should be controlling, should be aggressive, but this is not the case. So it could help to train leaders on different leadership styles so that they can be able to apply that in their work environment. Another thing could be also for the employees now, they can be trained on things like emotional resilience. You find that, of course, workplaces are stressful, and this is something that is normal. We're not saying that you're going to have it all smooth. Work is meant to be stressful so that you can actually be productive. But now when it goes overboard, of course, we need those emotional regulation skills. And this could be things that people are not even aware of. So you could have people like us, psychologists, or they call them employee assistance programs, whereby if someone is going through something, then they can always share with someone so that it doesn't affect their productivity at work. And the other thing is just to create awareness about these things, be on the lookout as well. Don't just be quick to assume that maybe someone is just lazy or not doing their work. Care to know what is happening to them, and also be fair. Most of the time you find that when it comes to bullying, people pick up on other people who would really allow others to step on them. So it's good to be fair, like in the issue of HR, whereby you've called people for summons. Listen to both sides so that you can know what is happening. Another thing is on accountability. You find that most of the time, I can put in all the work and then someone can come and roll with it because maybe they don't do their work. Maybe their work is just to stay in the office. So have that accountability of everyone. What are they? Sorry about that. What are they doing? Are they really following their job descriptions? Are they doing the work that they're supposed to do? And maybe I can now come to the side of now what we can do as employees. And this can start right from your workplace. So let's say someone is bullying you, someone is harassing you, then you have that mandate to say it to them. Don't allow them to do it, because sometimes I say some people do, maybe they wrong us because they don't know, maybe it's not intentional. And also when it's intentional, then you have to stand up for yourself. So you have to know how to communicate. Of course, when someone is being aggressive, being aggressive back does not help. You have to know how to assertively communicate your point. And then another thing is to create that trust in, let's say, people like micromanagers. You find that they struggle, they want to constantly be in control, know what you're doing, but sometimes, not always, building that trust in them, like they trust that you're doing the right thing, can help. The other thing is to look out for a positive colleague. And I want to stress on this because I've been on that cycle whereby you convene the two of you for negativity. So you find someone has done thing to me, and then they did it to Dorcas, and then we meet and discuss how bad that person is. And trust me, it never helps. You actually just live with all that negativity, and you feel like you have not helped each other. So the best way to do that could be to a positive coworker who can actually encourage you. It could also be to a person who is an outsider who won't pick sides. It could be to a family member. So find ways to let out that worry or stress that you have. And then when we come to now getting out of the workplace, we always say, don't carry your work home. And this literally means that you can just tell yourself, me, I used to have a place whereby I see the gate, that is the gate. Mimi naacha shida zangu hapa, and vice versa. When I'm going home and when I'm coming in, you can physically tell yourself, when I get here, then I will start thinking about another thing. And psychologically, the way you can do that is to just maybe do something to take your mind off that thing. It could be doing things that you find fun. It could be a hobby. It could be meeting up with your friends, something that will actually get your mind off that work. And whenever the stress is too much, then you have to find ways to let go of stress. It could be things like yoga, things like deep breathing. I used to do guided meditations, even taking breaks. During lunch breaks, I could go take a walk, find something that can help you diffuse that stress, so that even when you go back, then you go back in a fresh mind. And yeah, those are the ways that as employees we can also take care of our mental health, because of course what we're saying, maybe this is something that I haven't mentioned, but when everything else is not working, you have to leave that place. And of course, this is not easy, but you can start maybe planning your exit plan. So of course, if you don't have a job, you can start searching. Maybe you can even start your own side hustle on the side after work, and then grow it. And then it comes a time whereby leaving your place of work will not affect your finances. So that will be the last resort after all this is said and done.
Yeah, yeah, and Marianne, you've really given us a comprehensive package. And I think all of us are hearing, all of us are attentive. You've been given some of the coping mechanisms that can help you as an employee. And I want to quickly go through the comments. Emma says, true, Charles, women are their own worst enemies. That one we've already tackled, that women are actually victims of oppression. And there's something about being oppressed and really oppressing others just because you went through them. When you eliminate discrimination, and you eliminate the unnecessary competition. Really, women are not their own worst enemies. As a woman, when you look around, you will see that most of the people who have helped you are women. So I think the attitude comes in when we are faced in context of oppression, discrimination. There are no friends in oppression. So I think if there's one take-home message that we can get from this forum is that women are actually not their own worst enemies. Patriarchy, a system that has been created to oppress women, that is what is the worst enemy of women. Then with holiness says yeah, exactly, the attitude of women tearing each other down is as a result of centuries of oppression. So when we are finally given the chance to do things we were formerly denied, we are like conditioned to be defensive, not only towards other women, but anyone else who might be coming for what we have. Yeah, again, this is adding to the point that I just made. We have never been given, we have had to fight for these positions. And even when you get to those positions, you are still going to keep fighting because there's discrimination waiting for you. So really, as you are saying, oppression and being conditioned. I think from this place, it's what we are doing as an introduction, as this webinar, is also to examine and to reflect on some of these things that we have believed for so long, and to see, are they factual, are they scientific, or is it something that we have been conditioned to do? So yeah, Charles says we see this toxicity even out of the workplace. Competition aside, it's just what we see and experience. Not sure what that is about. As women, we shouldn't tear fellow women apart and bring them down, but instead learn to clap for their achievements and support each other. Be your sister's keeper. Again, yes, very true. Remember, we are all, both men and women are agents of patriarchy. Even when you come to believing, when we talk about patriarchy, it's a system that has been created to basically oppress women and to give men domination. And we believe both men and women are agents. We are all agents of patriarchy, meaning that we all support some of these beliefs that have been made to bring women down. So it's not that patriarchy is not men. Patriarchy is a system that both of us, men and women, are engaged in. So we both men and women don't believe that women can be leaders. We don't necessarily believe that. It takes an attitudinal change and a cultural change in our heads as a starting point. That Esther says, Dorcas, that conversation, what you just read, most people are not ready to have that conversation, even try to understand. I think Esther is talking about the conversation that the short script that I read, that why don't women support each other? And we just read that it's coming from an area of discrimination. We are so used to being discriminated, and we have accepted that kind of a life that we no longer challenge it. Huh? George says, I agree with the explanation on leadership tokenism. Exactly, Caroline. It shouldn't be like that, but it's like that due to the trauma of past years. Charles says, raising the level of psychological safety, which is well balanced with performance pressure, can curb the toxic atmosphere, an atmosphere where one is not afraid of being seen as ignorant or stupid by asking a question or raising a concern. Leaders have a lot to do with the development of this. Totally agree. And I think those are some of the points that Marianne had raised in her final comments. So we have come to the end of our discussion for tonight. Any final comments, Caroline and Marianne?
From my side, I just want to say this. The workplace is actually the place where we spend most of our time. If you're working for 8 hours, so that's a third of your time. So if we allow toxicity to get into us, then it means we are actually giving in, and it's definitely going to affect our well-being in all senses, and not just us, but even the people around us, our family, our friends. It affects us in all ways, socially, psychologically, even spiritually. So the best thing is to take care of ourselves, especially having that self-awareness of yourself. Know how much you can take in and how much you cannot take in. Learn coping mechanisms, and most of all, just learn to love yourself. I mean, that's the most important thing. And to learn to speak out as well, respecting the authority, but also forcefully putting across your points, because a lot of times it's actually fear that stops us from speaking out. But yeah, above all, being respectful, and this might just bring some changes and reduce the level of toxicity in at workplace. Yeah.
And Carol, if someone wants to reach out to you, maybe they want to continue this discussion further, how can they reach you?
You can also reach me on email, Jangshi, which is njangshi@gmail.com. And you can also reach me through DLI.
Okay. Okay, so I've written down Carol's contacts. If you want to continue this conversation, you can brainstorm together. So Marianne, brief final comments and your contacts on how you reach.
All right. First of all, I want to thank you, Dorcas, for hosting this and for starting this discussion about toxic workplaces. What I can say is toxic workplaces affect your mental health, and we say that anything that is affecting your mental health, you should do something about it, and you should not let it affect your mental health, because your mental health is very important. You can imagine when your mental health is not okay, then generally you're not going to be okay. So we need to take care of it. And if toxic workplace is the one that is affecting it, then you need to do something about it. It can come from you, it can come from your bosses, your managers, or it could, even if it means that you leave that workplace, then so be it. Thank you so much again. And the way people can reach me is I have a YouTube channel. It's called Therapist Marianne, and this is a conversation that I'm going to continue on there so that you can be able to learn more. And I'm also very active on my social medias, which are Marianne Warugolo across all platforms. And I've actually started this conversation this week about toxic work environment. And actually, I posted a photo which said that we are in a generation whereby we say this work is not about to kill us. So if it's going to affect you, then it's not worth it. It's not worth it. So that is it from me. Thank you.
Okay, thanks so much, everyone, for participating. For me, you can reach me through Diversity Leap International on all our social media. If you want to continue the conversation, my phone number is 0721610207. 0721610207. I know many people still want to brainstorm on the issue of bullying and maybe women being the worst enemies, blah, blah, blah. Reach out for me for any gender-related conversation, sparring, brainstorm. I'm open to that. So finally, we have come to the end of our webinar today, and I would like to thank you all for participating today. Our panelists, Carol Njangiru and Marianne Warogoro, thank you so much. They are available to be reached out for consultation on this topic and any other related topics. So this webinar was just a tip of the iceberg, and these conversations should continue in our workplaces. This was just introductory. We will never have enough time to finish. So please see yourselves as ambassadors for this. Mental health is very, very crucial for our general well-being. You've seen the First Lady has launched a mental health campaign in the country. We have seen cases of suicide really going very high. So let's take our mental health seriously. Because we spend entire days in these workplaces and they should not be making us sick. So please send yourselves as ambassadors to continue these conversations with your colleagues, with your relatives everywhere. So once again, asanteni, you're welcome to stay. If you want to stay, please stay. But for the rest of us, we want to go and sleep. Tomorrow is a working day. Thank God it's Friday. And so asanteni sana.
Thank you very much.
Thanks so
Thank you,
much.
Dorcas. For anyone who may need therapy services, now that you have mentioned about the issue of mental health, they can always reach out to me. Like I said, my social media is very active, so you can just easily DM me. Thank you.
Asante sana. Good night,
Thank you
everybody.
very much.
Time to go
Good
to
night.
sleep. Thanks. Good night. We
Bye.
are going to switch off the lights.